Okay, fantastic. There's quite a few guys joined on there. So yeah, no, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, thank you everybody for turning up today. It's great to see some familiar names and new names pop up to these events on a week by week basis. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Barie Hasib. I am the Managing Director of BIM REC. We're an essential BIM recruitment partner for clients and candidates basically looking to win with BIM. I'm joined today by Ben Wallbank. Ben is a sales engineer, BIM strategy manager for Viewpoint. He's presenting today on what a good BIM client should do and what to do when they don't. As mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions, please click on the orange rectangle to the right-hand side. Any questions, file them across to me. For future webinars, please visit bimrec.com/BIM-webinars. With that said...
Great. Okay, so I'm going to go. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about what a good BIM client should do and what to do when they don't. So my name is Ben Wallbank. I'm an architect by background, but for the past more than 5 years now, I've been working as that awful thing, a BIM consultant. And I'm now at Viewpoint, where I am a BIM strategy manager and also help with some of the sort of sales background to the business as well. So I've been lecturing on BIM now at various universities around the UK and I've done a little bit of lecturing in China and Brazil as well. I'm a member of the Building Smart Technical Committee, and I sit on the BIM Technologies Alliance for Viewpoint. And the BIM Technologies Alliance, for those that don't know, is that fun fight you can imagine with all the different software companies sitting and both taking feedback from government in the UK and providing feedback back to them about what it is that they're trying to achieve. So today, my agenda is, first of all, I know that you've been lucky enough to have people like Mervyn Richards talk to you, so you'll know a bit about the standards and so on, but I'm going to give a very, very quick overview because I think that's important of the UK Level 2 standards. It's perhaps important to say that everything that I tell you today will have a UK slant on it, so I'm really looking at what these standards and documents that together make up Level 2, what they're asking the UK client to do, or suggesting that the UK client should do. But actually, I think they're so sensible, these things, that they are more applicable worldwide as well, I believe. So then I'm going to look at, in detail, at what the employers are supposed to do. So I'm focusing, it's quite important to say that I'm focusing today on the CapEx portion, so the actual delivery of an asset. Rather than on the OPEX, the operational portion, because there's a bunch more things that I'll probably mention in passing that the BS 1192, the PAS for BS 1192 Part 3 suggests that an employer would do, but as I say, I'm focusing very much on the CapEx period, the actual production of the asset. So then I'll give a little picture about what I think is actually happening. So I'll say what we're supposed to be doing as an employer, then what's actually happening, and then what would be a reasonable reaction if, in fact, you find that the employer isn't doing what the standards say that perhaps they might be doing. So first of all, this little reminder, both of the standards and what the Level 2 deliverables are. So the deliverables are that, you know, each contributor to the BIM works in their own authoring software, and that these are then federated. Checks are done. That's important to say. You've got to check that the quality of the work that you're doing is good. It's then federated into a single model, and from that federated model, you produce a set of 2D contract drawings, PDFs. So in fact, this is very similar to what we've always done under 2D process, the only difference here being that the drawings are produced from the federated model. Then we've got probably the greatest requirement of UK Level 2 BIM is COBie, which is asset data in a shareable structured format. That's really the only bit that's going to be slightly tricky to deal with when you first do it. And then handed over to the client at the end of the day are native files along with the 2D contract drawings and your COBie data, native files are handed over to the client as well. And importantly, these all sit within a common data environment. So all the information, so you have a single source of truth, if you like, for the information on an asset. So in the UK, we're really lucky. In a remarkably short time, really since the end of 2010 till today, an integrated suite of standards and documentation, supporting documents, guidance note have been produced, which together define what level 2 is, those deliverables I've already referred to. And those are put together by the Construction Industry Council, by CPIX, by the British Standards Institute, and by Building Smart in the UK. And the Construction Industry Council dealt with the legal side of things, the commercial and legal side of what documentation needs to deal with. Building Smart dealt with the way, so originally around the COBie format, and then we're moving now towards more use of RFC as the structured way that different pieces of software talk to each other. CPIX dealt with classification to a stage, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. And the British Standards Institute, surprise, surprise, put together the standards. So these are that suite of documents. So you've got 5 parts to BS 1192. Part 1, which is actually BS 1192 2007. I call it Part 1 because it's kind of obvious to do that, since there are another 5 parts. Part 1 deals with how documentation, which doesn't actually have to be BIM documentation, how we exchange in a collaborative environment and structure our information in a way that makes it clear what we're doing, and in a way that will be clear from job to job to job, the same from job to job to job. The pass for 1192 Part 2 deals with the construction process and BIM, and the pass for 1192 Part 3 deals with the operational side of the asset, the OPEX period. Then we've got BS 1192 Part 4, which details what we're supposed to be doing with COBie data. And we've now got a new pass that's come out, 1192 Part 5, which deals with cybersecurity. So those are the standards which are supposed to be working. Alongside those, we've got a whole suite of documents by CIC. In particular, the key one is the CIC BIM protocol. Then you've got government soft landings, and you've got these 2 bits which are actually still to be delivered. Still key planks, but they're out really shortly now, due out now, and they're there or thereabouts, I understand. So these are the digital plan of work. Now this relates to the level of detail required both in terms of geometrical detail and also in terms of information detail for each element of the building at each work stage. That's a web-based way of a client defining that, and also the completion of classification. So you'll notice that if I go back, that those signs of COBie change to IFC, and CPIX turn to MBS, because it's MBS who are running the show with regards to completion of the digital plan of work and classification. And I'll talk a bit more about that as we go through. So does this new raft of standards and suggested ways that we work affect the employer? And the answer is yes, it does. I think that there are a series of things that we are supposed to do. So the first one is that a client should use the CIC BIM protocol. It's really an absolutely key document in contract terms. This enables you, first of all, it takes precedence over any other agreement, and really importantly, it's been developed just for level 2 as we head beyond level 2 to some of the more exciting things that BIM and structured digital data will be able to offer us. We're going to need new forms of contract. But what the BIM protocol does is it allows us to use any standard form of contract, and it sits alongside that as the primary document in relation to the production of BIM. It creates no new relationships between project team members, and it's been specifically drafted to avoid creating additional liabilities. And it can be used as a way to make the adoption of collaborative process an express contract term. Now, the really shocking thing, so this is supposed to go out, be issued out to every contributor to a BIM by a client. And the really shocking thing is that I'm seeing very little usage of it yet, which I think potentially leads, because we're still using all our standard forms of contracts, but we're doing BIM. Without this document, it potentially leads to potential problems with things like intellectual property rights and professional indemnity insurance. Again, there are documents, supporting documents, which CIC have produced to talk about these specific issues to go with the BIM protocol. So that's really the first thing that I would expect a good BIM client to be doing, is to use the protocol document. The second thing is to appoint somebody to the role of information manager. And again, there's a guidance document which you can see here, produced by the Construction Industry Council to cover that. So it's saying that a client must make an appointment to the role of information manager on all level 2 projects. Importantly, it may be a series of appointments, and also it may be an additional responsibility to an existing contributor. So they're not actually saying this is a completely new role with a completely new new cost attached to it. What they're actually saying is this is a role that somebody needs to do at each stage of the project. Now, it would kind of make sense to me that the lead consultant, at least for the first 2 exchanges of COBie information, will take on the role of information manager, because they are coordinating the works as part of their appointment normally anyway. And then it would make sense to me that perhaps during exchanges of information 3 and 4 in COBie terms, that it would be somebody within the contractor that would take on the role, probably an additional responsibility to a design manager, because at that stage the information being entered into COBie comes from the supply chain, and it is the contractor that has those relationships with the supply chain and who will want to be sure that the information on, for instance, warranty data, spares, jobs, is all correctly entered by them. So it would make sense to them. And then obviously, it certainly would be the building manager as we head into the OPEX period. But this is to be determined, really. It may well be that it's you might appoint your project manager to do this job throughout. So it doesn't have to be that route, but that's what makes sense to me. So that's a second responsibility. Third responsibility is really to this part 2 asks for. Now, you'll recall, you will have seen these, those of you who listen to Mervyn will certainly have been talked through this. You'll be seeing that 1192 Part 2 is really a process that it's envisaged that we go through. You start here with an assessment by the client, by the employer, of what they need to know, what knowledge they can take from their existing assets. What information do I know, and what information do I want? So that really is a responsibility on the employer. And from, sorry, on the wrong way. And from that, they are supposed to put together an employer's information requirement. That is, what information do I need and in what format? That goes out as part of the tender to the market as one of the documents within the employer's requirements. And BS 1192 suggests then that the market responds with a preliminary BIM execution plan, that when you're heading towards appointment, they will deliver a master program for the delivery of the BIM works, a master information delivery program, that the project then starts, and you have a series of information exchanges from the very early stages of the project on which client decisions are made. So the design is done, the construction happens. During that period, information grows, you get to handover, and then you operate the facility. And potentially you go round again when you, for instance, extend or refurbish your asset. But it all starts there with this information requirement. So then the next thing I would expect to see an employer doing is producing an EIR. So in terms of where this sits, the employer's information requirements, an EIR sets the high-level standards. So an employer might have an EIR that would, if there are multiple commissioner of construction projects, I would expect them to have an EIR that's very similar from job to job to job because it sets the high-level standards. The BIM execution plan is what the team responds with, a BEP, and this sets the project-specific standards. So obviously you may have some project-specific standards which would be set within an EIR. If, for instance, there are, I don't know, a room naming convention which is specific to this job, this particular job, you may have some bits within an EIR, but it's generally it would generally be the project-specific bits. For instance, an XYZ of the origin for the BIM would be within the BEP. And the BEP is subsidiary to the EIR contractually. So it's a response to that employer's information requirement. How am I going to deliver this job? How are we as a team going to deliver this job for the client? And then you get your BIM delivery programs, your task information delivery programs, which come from each individual contributor, which are then by the information manager put together into a master delivery program for the BIM. So these are developed by the contributors to the federated model, and the issue and use of this information makes the use of the collaborative environment clear. What are we doing? How are we working together? So, the key thing here really is I would expect an employer to deliver an EIR. So the fourth one, COBie. COBie is not a thing. COBie is a selection of things. So a client can, there are a whole bunch of standard fields within COBie, but there are also some which are specific that a client can choose or choose not to. So that first iteration of the COBie requirement. So here are those exchanges of information. So during the CAPEX period, I would expect the employer's decision points 1, 2, 3, and 6, which are the COBie exchanges of information, to take place. And those are defined up here at what I would define as employer's information exchange naught. So in other words, again, as part of the EIR, I would expect to find bound in by the client the specific COBie requirements that they're expecting the supply chain to react to. So when COBie is required, a spreadsheet should be issued with the EIR. When a project is initiated, data is entered into the spreadsheet by hand. Now that will be quickly replaced within the digital plan of work by an electronic entry of this information, and the tabs are color-coded. And this defines what is required, reference to another pick sheet, or externally referenced. Again, the process is being automated, so we're already heading on beyond the simple spreadsheet now. And relevant contract data is entered by hand. So this is the start of that interactive data. So, you know, for instance, when that organogram that we all have of who are the various players in this job becomes an automated process which nobody then has to enter in again. So it's issued out by the employer at the beginning of the job. And there's a fifth thing that I would expect a client to do, and that, we now know, is relating to cybersecurity. So here is the draft for the PAS of 1192 Part 5, and again, it places duties on an employer to do a strategic risk analysis, to appoint an asset security manager. Again, this could be an additional duty on an existing consultant, and to maintain and develop a security management plan. So obviously, you know, what this is kind of saying is, well, you know, if you're a client, if you've got, if you're doing a school, you'll have a certain set of security requirements that you might need to need to do. If it would be a courthouse, it would be something a bit more, and if it were a nuclear bunker, it would probably be a lot more. So again, it's just saying you need to think about these things, you need to point somebody to the responsibility, and you need to maintain that plan. So the security management plan, again, should be issued as part of the employer's requirements, placing a contractual duty upon the supply chain to do this. So these are all things that the standards and the suite of documentation are suggesting that a good employer would do, and I would certainly see the 8 major UK government commissioning departments doing these things pretty well as time goes on. So let's look at that now. So these have a contractual relationship. So you can see, so the red bits are the BIM bits. You can see that sitting alongside the contract, as part of the contract, you've got the CIC BIM protocol, which deals with the BIM bits. It is, if there is any discrepancy between the contract used and the CIC BIM protocol, it states very clearly that the CIC protocol is the primary document. Sitting below that, you have the employer's requirements, in other words, your EIR and your security management plan, and the contractor's proposal would include the BIM execution plan and the master information delivery program for the work. And again, below that you have sitting COBE and the digital plan of work and the various standards which we're expected to use. I'll just mention in passing, of course, that there is part of the information model which sits outside the BIM delivery, so you can have delivery of stuff which of data which does not directly generate from the BIM model itself. So that's important to mention, that part of the data requirement can sit outside the bits covered by the CIC protocol. Okay, so those are the 5 things that I think that a good client, in terms of commissioning CapEx, the construction process of an asset, ought to do. But I think there are also 3 more things a client might reasonably think about doing. So the first one of those 3 things, government have been putting together some standard forms. So in terms of pre-qualification, so standard pre-qualification questionnaires. This one is PAS 91. PAS 91 has all the things that you would expect it to have in terms of, you know, the actual economic performance of a business, what you've done before, et cetera, et cetera. But it also has an appendix in it which is specifically BIM related. And that relates to, is this a company, are you a company which is capable of delivering jobs to BS 1192 in its various parts? And are you trained up both as a company, as part of your company standard, but also as individuals within that company to be able to deliver a job to BS 1192? So that's really important. So that deals specifically with working to the standards. But if you look at 1192, in section 6, you will find that it also suggests that pre-contract BIM execution plan. So again, I'm afraid 1192 is the most, I'm sure Mervyn won't forgive me for saying, but it is very acronym heavy. So as part of your pre-contract BIM responding to an employer's EIR, you should produce a project implementation plan, and as part of that project implementation plan should be, for each of the contributors to the BIM, a CPICS pro forma pre-qualification questionnaire which deals with the specific competencies of a firm to deliver BIM. So it's in 4 parts. It's got gateway questions, BIM analysis, project experience, and a BIM capability questionnaire. Now, the important thing about this the use of standard forms, so I'm suggesting that any employer should think about centering around a standard set of PQQs. The industry wastes an enormous amount of time at the moment dealing with bespoke PQQs. Any request for information from the supply chain now tends to come in very bespoke forms, and we all spend days filling these things out. So the idea here is that by using standard PQQs, the industry can start to just have a standard way of answering, not spend these days answering. So again, I would think it's a reasonable thing that any employer ought to do to start centering around these standard forms. And so I'll just give a little snapshot here from the CPIC form. So this is really looking at specific expertise. It gives you a chance to say, right, my firm can do these things. Here's the supporting evidence to say that we've done these things in the past. Here are the jobs that we've done. This is what we'd expect to get from it. So that's the first one of the things, in addition to the things that you really ought to do, that I would hope a client would do. The next one, and it's not there yet as a have to do, but it's I would hope to do very shortly, which is use the digital plan of work. So again, it's a slightly out-of-date slide that I've nicked from NBS here, so it's referring to Unit Class 2. We now know that Unit Class 2 classification will be called Unit Class 2015. And so this deals with how one classifies everything from the whole series of facilities to a building, to the activities that would be going on within that, to the elements within that, and to systems and products within the building, how all those things are classified. So it deals with all those things. So at last, we will have that classification that we haven't had for BIM in the UK. And again, as I said, for each work stage, so there'll be a series of templates relating to specific to different job types. So it might be a railway, it might be a road, or it might be, as in this case, a school. It allows the client to go in and for a specific work stage to define the level of detail and the level of information at each work stage. And in other words, who's doing what and when? What are they expecting from each collaborator, from each contributor to the BIM project? It's a standardized information to be used in IFC format. So it's moving us a little bit further forward down the route of IFCs being the non-proprietary shareable structured data format sitting behind everything. And we will both be able, once a client has done that work within the digital plan of work, the DPAL, once they've set out the standards, we'll be able to download a file which will pre-populate, because it's an IFC import, will pre-populate a lot of the requirements within our various tools, and then once we think we've done the work, we will be able to upload and view, upload an IFC 2x3 file and view that project. So in other words, it's an open database thing based upon a technology called XBIM. And you'll notice, those of you who've been more eagle-eyed, that government are shrink-wrapping what level 2's been, and they're moving on to whatever level 3 will be. It's not very clear, but they put together a strategic plan for that delivery. And those of you who have spotted it will have seen that they're defining something which is, they're calling level 3A, which is basically just level 2, but using the digital plan of work. In other words, centering everything around IFC for data exchange. And again, you'll see as we head further forward, IFC for infrastructure and so on will also be there too. So centered around IFC data, and this kind of changes that deliverable map a bit as we head towards level 3. So you still have however many authoring softwares you have, and you still check them, and then, but now the check will be done, can be done to a degree by the digital plan of work, and it be federated as an IFC model. You'll still be able to chuck out the information to a COBie spreadsheet, but equally you'll be able to go direct with your IFC model view definition for FM, because COBie obviously is just a subset of IFC. You'll be able to go direct from model to FM tool without the necessity. So the spreadsheet is still really useful for the client, incidentally. They can do lots of interesting things just with the data from that, but we can all begin to bury the spreadsheet away and just get on with that being under the hood. And of course, from that FM tool, we'll also be able to produce a COBie spreadsheet too. We still have the 2D contract drawings and specs as the deliverable, but really importantly, everything does still sit within a common data environment. And I think really importantly, the deliverable then can be that federated IFC. Now remember that if the deliverable is as it is under straight level 2, the deliverable were native software files, and these degrade really fast, if we're honest. You know, softwares, all the various softwares are now on really fast release cycles, and you very quickly get to a stage where it's not really an archivable format. IFC has an enormous advantage for everybody in that it is always bootstrapped. It is always backwards compatible. So yes, it moves on, so we're heading now towards IFC4, but you'll always be able to use the information that was in older versions of IFCs. It's much better as an archival format and so much better for the client. And it should come as no surprise, because if we look back to 2011, to the BIM strategy paper that government released, it said our final vision for the delivery of this information will be a fully web-enabled, transparent to the user scenario based on building smart IFC, IDM, and RFD standards. In other words, the DPAL. So in terms of the good old view Richards wedge that so those of you playing BIM Bingo can now tick it off. But you'll note that I've just made it clear that the stuff about IFCs were always there. So 3A is just taking a little bit of that into the line. So the third thing, so this is where I just talked to you a little bit about Viewpoint as well. So this is my chance to talk about common data environment. So you will have noticed that one of the requirements for Level 2 BIM is that we all work within a common data environment, so we have access to the same data at the same time. And really, so why would a client want to think about this? Those of you who have used common data environments will often have done so almost just to date, almost just as an electronic document management system. But we're moving way beyond that now and moving there fast. So really from the time, even before a client has an idea about a specific building or a specific asset, perhaps they're looking at a variety of sites. From that very early stage, the common data environment can be used to record and validate the information that's being entered as part of the decision process, even by the client at the earliest stage. So, of course, it will do the construction period too for the construction team, but it is, remember, it's the whole drive towards why is COBie so important? Why are governments stressing as really the only really key differentiator of the UK task at the BIM deliverables at the moment is this setting out of how you get to non-proprietary shareable asset data, and it's because of this. It's because if you look at the AC building cycle from the inception of a project right through to its demolition, only 3% of the cost of an asset is its design. Only 17% is its construction. And all the rest, in this case not even including demolition, all the rest relates to its running, to the OPEX period. So keeping everything running, changing the light bulb more efficient, all of those things that will save you money throughout the maybe 100 years of an asset's life, make the asset data side of things really important. So we're moving away from the common data environment being related just to the delivery period, but it's also moving forward to the brief and design period, the inception brief and design period, and out beyond to the operational period. So at inception, you'd expect investment process to be set out and logged, project deliverables defined, tenders monitored. So part of that would be the development of EIRs. So there's actually, if you look, and I'm deliberately not talking about it too much today, but if you look at the PAS for 1192 Part 3, that suggests that a client, that an employer or a client or an asset owner would be doing some other things as well, putting together an organization information requirement. What are the things that our organization needs to know? An asset information requirement. So what are the things in our assets that are useful for us to know? So in other words, doing those preliminary investigations of existing assets, and that they together make up the information that's entered into the employer's EIR. And of course, they want to monitor and assess tenders. So it's on through the construction process, progress monitored, problems identified early, deliverables validated, reworking eliminated, records maintained, through the operational period, easy graphical access to quality data. So we know we've got data which is for the facilities management which has been developed throughout the design and construction process, not in a 2-week period just before handover. So that's single source information. So in other words, the common data environment has the potential to be that cradle to grave data environment. So I would suggest, though obviously again tools are open and interoperable, it may make sense for an employer to also think about specifying the common data environment to be used through the project. So I'll talk a little bit, very briefly, about Viewpoint. We're a company with our headquarters in Portland, Oregon, in the States, an American company. We're 900 plus strong. In the UK, we've got a head office which actually runs the whole of Europe and the Middle East as well. In Newcastle, over 100 strong there. An office of 20 in dealing with our mobile solutions in Swansea. And various other staff around the country as well. And what we would say is ask the question of your common data environment. Can it define? So as part of our solution, we have data planning and coordination. We've got ways in which you can set out what the deliverables are going to be. So you can figure project information and requirements within the tool. You can, again, a lot of the industry is looking at lean process and there's process mapping here along the bottom. You can see the process map for the Ministry of Justice, who are one of our clients. And again, we can process map within the tool so that you can begin to set out all of those gateways, key gateways, who's approving what the process is throughout the entire project. And of course, COBE deliverables can also be set out. So again, you can define what's required. You can validate it. We've got RAG reporting saying, where are we? Red, amber, green reporting of where everybody is with, where each contributor is with their portion of COBE, and of course, that all gets recorded. And really crucially, from the construction point of view, the supply chain can enter data themselves on our web-based browser into the common data environment. Just their bit of COBE data, and it gets appended and federated into a single COBE output. Monitoring is vitally important, and validation. So again, can your common data environment do that? Part of that obviously is to have a web-based browser federator for your model. Again, we can do that, and we can mark up and work collaboratively over the internet from the common data environment. And of course, at the end of the day, everything is recorded. And really importantly, as I mentioned in passing, that we've got our mobile solution now, which obviously provides data entry from site. This is called Viewpoint Field View, and some of you will know it because it's been around for a while as Priority 1. So integration with the common data environment is underway at the moment. So, in summary, so that's the last of the sales bit. You'll be really happy to hear. So in summary, an employer's level 2 responsibilities should be issuing an identical CIC BIM protocol to all contributing parties to a BIM as a contract document alongside the building contract. Issuing an employer's information requirement, which sets out. So this is part of the employer's requirements. So it's part of the tender process. as an employer, you're saying, this is what I need my design team to deliver. And the requirements for a project work should be that they work in accordance with 1192. If COBE is required, they should be issuing information on what is required for that as part of the EIR. The appointment of a person or persons at various stages to the role of information manager is also required. And as of this month, the digital plan of work should probably be used as well. And I would suggest that standard PQQs. So all those things are great things that we would expect our employers to be doing. So the next question is this happening? And I think all of us in the industry know that with the exception of government themselves, who are very quickly becoming very good BIM clients, those 8 commissioning departments are becoming very good. There's a lot of work being put internally within the Cabinet Office to ensure that they become good commissioners of BIM. So I think the latest figure I heard was there's already £11 billion worth of work out there with BIM deliverables, and that'll very quickly, as we head towards 2016, become the rest of that 40 billion per annum expenditure. So that's happening, but of course this is not just there's another 60% of the £110 billion of UK construction expenditure which is by private sector clients, and it's very patchy, and there's very patchy knowledge is the answer. So if you're faced then with a client who perhaps is saying, I want BIM but hasn't done their bits, all the bits that I've outlined, what do you do? Do you say, throw up your hands in horror and say, well, we can't do BIM yet? And I would suggest that is not, sorry, that's of course the client thinks you're professional. I would suggest that you do whatever you would normally do when a client needs a little bit of hand-holding. Many clients within the construction industry will build once in their careers. It's not something that they would do all the time. And in those cases, we are expected to be the people who would advise them and help them on their route to doing this. And there are such huge advantages, particularly with asset data, for use throughout a building's life. But, I would expect a good construction industry professional, a good design team, to be helping them. So, I don't think you can go to them and start saying, right, you're not doing what you're doing, this is really bad, because any self-respecting client will just tell you where to go. I think you've got to go to them, with a kind of, we can help you with this. Of course, we can show you how to do this better. So the first thing I would say is you really need this. So if a client's come to you and wants you to do BIM, and they are not using the BIM protocol, I would really strongly suggest that you say to them in the nicest possible way, my professional indemnity insurance probably isn't going to cover you unless we use this. And it gives you all kinds of protections in terms of your intellectual property rights and the use of your information throughout the building's life, but not on other stuff. So there are all kinds of really good things in there that I could talk about in detail, but I'm just not going to because I don't have the time. So again, if your client hasn't done it, I would suggest that you, as a design team, as a delivery team, need to sit down together, and in the absence of that, decide who is taking on the role of information manager or information managers at the various work stages. If you don't get an EIR, so a lot of jobs are coming to the market and people are saying, well, we want BIM, but they haven't put together an EIR, or they've put together something that they think is an EIR but actually isn't. So if you don't get an EIR, so detail what BIM information you will deliver in the BEP, in your BIM execution plan, your response. And document, I think all you'd need to do then is document that in the absence of an EIR, it is the BEP which is the primary document for defining what BIM deliverables you're going to give them. And through this, the issue of information in the collaborative environment is made clear by you as a team in the absence of this coming from the employer. It's the same with COBE. You know, it is perfectly possible for you to look at which of the green requirable fields you think you will deliver if your client isn't doing that, and you should sit down with them and say, right, you know, we're going to give you these bits, and we're not doing these bits. You know, this is what we can reasonably give you. So, I would also suggest, as individual companies, that we complete our standard sets of pre-qualification questionnaires and try and make them the norm, because this will help us all enormously as we tender from job to job to job. Help clients with the digital plan of work. Again, a clear definition of who's doing what and when and to what standards, both in terms of geometry and information, will help protect you. And again, as these things become normal, it will be a reasonable thing in legal terms to be seen to have done. So, you know, if there were a problem at any stage, if you've used standard forms, if you've used the standard systems which have been set up, and the standards generally, you will be seen to have been acting in a reasonable way. I would strongly suggest you have a realistic statement, so that PQQ has a realistic statement of your BIM competencies, so that you can again help define what you're doing, and obviously keep that up to date as you gain extra experience, and make sure that you understand all parties' roles and responsibilities and the uses of the UK BIM suite and classifications and standards. So this is my plea really for us as an industry to start using standards. I'm sure Mervyn will have said this to you, but my goodness me, you know, it would be a massive advantage if we all worked in the same way. You know, if we didn't have to spend 3 days training every new member of staff that comes into our companies in the way that we as a specific company work. If they just turned up and knew how things were labelled, how things were done, it will be a massive advantage and a massive, massive cost saver for us all. So rather than grouching about, I don't like this way of numbering things or that way because I've always done it this way, why don't we all just get on and do it? Okay, so in summary, you know, I'd say the suite of documents, I think, is pretty good. We can all have our little quibbles about them, and I've got mine, but I think it's really very good, and I would suggest we all use them. Clients have responsibilities very clearly set out in them, but many don't yet know what they're supposed to do. So if a client doesn't know what they're going to do, what they should do, you can offer good advice to help them through the process. And that's really what I would say my key message is. So clients and BIM, it's not a problem. Okay, so thank you very much. I just hope anybody's been listening to me because I've no idea. Please do ask some questions.
Fantastic.
Okay,
they certainly have. I do have quite a few questions that we had previously. However, also as well, I'd like to open up the chat box if you're fine with time, Ben. If you've got 5-10 minutes now.
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine.
Fantastic.
As long as you like.
So, okay, I suppose it's answering the same question. Some clients cannot see the need for implementing BIM on a small project, as the investment needed is not worth the value on the project. How do you influence such a client to take on BIM? But that's...
Well, okay, I'll just pick up on that one a little bit because
that's a common one, actually.
The first thing I would say is look, you know, in 5 years' time, nobody will be talking about BIM. It will just be the way that we work. We're in this tipping point now where we've suddenly got this huge raft of work coming out into the market that's requiring us to work to deliver BIM properly. Once we've done this for a while, there are massive advantages. All of us who've worked on projects where we've done this see what the advantages are. Even for the, you know, so the contractor stands to benefit a lot, but even the consultants will benefit a bit from well-managed BIM process, and the client stands to benefit masses and masses and masses. So, you know, even on small jobs, I would say, you know, this isn't a case of, you know, we just ought to be making this change now and trying to change the way that we work. In terms of assembling the team,
yeah.
I think this is about in the absence of team members who are clearly good, I think it is a matter, you know, of assembling teams of like-minded professionals who are keen to go on this journey together. And the most successful jobs I've seen have involved precisely that, where people, you know, are taking a very collaborative approach, being proactive, understanding that maybe the first time that you do something, there's a little bit of toing and froing.
Sure.
You know, so I'd just say, think about structuring the way that you do things. BIM can be really unsuccessful if everybody just goes off and does a bit of modeling and then does their own thing. You know, because this is really all about structuring the data well.
Sure.
And getting the models to the right level of detail and so on. So, you know, it's no good having one person, you know, modeling to a fantastic level of detail and somebody else, you know, doing a little bit. It all needs to be documented and processed and how you do it. But, you know, we do all of this stuff in the 2D process. We've just forgotten that it's all down there. You know, it's all down in our contracts of appointment, how we work and what we do. You know, all of that's been there. It's just because, you know, we're being asked to make a little bit of a change now that everybody's getting very concerned about it. But, you know, the benefits are so huge and are so obvious once you start doing it. I would always say, get on and do it. The costs really are not great, if I'm honest. You know, there's a short-term pain while you learn, and the main cost is not in equipment and hardware. It's in training.
Sure.
So there is a cost. There's a cost in the early projects whilst you learn the new process. Once it's learnt, it's all there, and it will make us immeasurably more efficient as we go from job to job to job. If we're all working in the same way, if we all know this, you know, it's not what we're used to. So there's a little bit of a kickback now.
An analogy I always use is cost versus price. Cost always wins.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We've got a couple of questions with regards to FMs as well. Most FM providers are not ready to accept COBie. Does BIM see information exchange as being bespoke to both government departments and private clients? And also, how does BIM see AMs being updated by FM providers as well?
Brilliant. I'm really glad somebody asked that question. There is an enormous misunderstanding about COBie. COBie, everybody sees COBie as a spreadsheet, which indeed it can be. But the key thing with COBie is actually it's about non-proprietary structured data. Now, of course, if you look at an individual project or an individual asset, you may well think, and you may well be right, that it is easier for you to go from proprietary system A to proprietary FM system B by mapping the individual fields, so within each BIM originating software, where information is placed is bespoke to that software. Yeah? So you may find that you know, so most FM systems are relational databases, and you may find, well, I can map from the field within the originating software to the field within the FM software, but quite easily, and I do that on a bespoke basis. Now, what you're completely missing here is what COBie is actually about, which is it is this open, non-proprietary data source, so that on all jobs, everything is structured in the same way. So, let me give an example. One of Viewpoint's clients is the Ministry of Justice in the UK. What they want to do now, and we're just starting this journey with them, what they want to do is to be able to search, let's say, I don't know, for a boiler. So maybe they've had trouble with a boiler in one prison, I don't know, or in one courthouse. So they want to be able to search across all their assets, search the data across all their assets. It's the beginning. This is just the very beginning of what big data is going to be about. You know, being able to trawl for data in massive data sets. So they want to be able to trawl across all their assets and say, right, give me the data on this boiler. How often is it being serviced, or you know, how often are we having to replace it? Now, if each site has its own bespoke way of putting data together, you will not be able to do that. You've got to have that data structure. So the idea with COBE is that it is the start. So COBE is a subset of IFC, of the industry foundation classes, which deal with far more than just FM.
Sure.
But it's the start of that. So you know, I've heard government refer to COBE as the trainer wheels for collaborative, non-proprietary structured data that we can all share. So that's why COBE is so important. It's more about where we're going, about the big data picture, about being able to trawl across large data sets, not just within a single asset. So it's just starting to learn to do that. Now, everybody's got a bit confused because of the data, because of the spreadsheetiness of it. But the reality is that will all be a bit like HTML. That will all be under the hood and hidden very quickly now. There's no need for us to go via the spreadsheet. The client still wants it as a deliverable, but you know, most of the softwares will now spit out a COBE spreadsheet. So you know, I would expect most people to go from their federated BIM model directly into an FM tool, and that information, that COBE information that sits within the IFC of that federated BIM model, will populate the bulk, not all, but the bulk of that FM tool, that computer-aided facilities management tool. It will populate the bulk of that in a standard format that we'll be able to do searches across. That's why it's important. Not a lot of people are talking about that as being the why it's important. They're just looking at it and saying, well, it's a spreadsheet, that's ridiculous. Why don't we just go from BIM to our own FM tool, and then not looking at that big data thing. So thank you for asking the question.
Okay, so if you don't provide COBE, is it still a level 2 project? Another question.
Not as far as government are concerned. That is a deliverable for them. Now, you know, what the private sector does, of course, will be up to the private sector. It would seem to me sensible that as an industry, whether we are private sector or public sector, that we center around the same data format, because there are huge advantages. If we all get used to doing it and it all becomes second nature and it all becomes hidden and under the hood, it'll all be very easy. Whereas if each large private sector client has their own particular ways of doing things, we're building inefficiencies into our industry again. Frankly, it's up to them. Government are very clear. For them, level 2 include a key, if not the key deliverable of level 2 BIM is COBE.
Okay, fantastic. What are the most beneficial changes to make within the structure of a practice to ensure BIM is rolled out efficiently within a practice, and how important do you feel it is for a practice to enhance BIM level 2 now? That's actually come from the guy in the Middle East, so it's not necessarily from a UK-based client.
So it's kind of straying onto slightly different ground, which is more about BIM implementation. Which is also something that I'm keen to talk about, but it's really moving away from the client definition side of things.
Okay.
So there were two elements to this. It's, well, you know, how does an organization go about making a change to BIM working practice? So the first thing I would say is, you know, move away from the idea that this is just about technology, and really move. You know, if you look at any change process within a business, you know, there are established change management processes, and these almost always center around this triumvirate of people, process, and lastly, technology. So my emphasis would be, you know, think about what you've got to do to take everybody with you in terms of the people roles. So, you know, in BIM terms, I would make sure that your entire organization has a base level of BIM knowledge, so they understand what it is that BIM can offer and why they're doing it. I would strongly suggest that you have, you know, this can't succeed without a keen champion at board level. So it really does need to have somebody right up at the top to lead this and to ensure that it goes well. And I would suggest you also then need groups, a structure and groups within the practice to feed the coalface information back up and also feed down from the top the strategic BIM decisions that are being made. So the people side certainly needs to be done, and then obviously you also need to train each individual with the specific skill sets that they need for their job. So for example, at director level, it would be about understanding contracts and appointments in BIM terms would be a specific skill set that they would need, whereas it might be the producer of a BIM model obviously needs to know specific software-based information. So people, the process side of things, what it is that you're doing, those of you who deal with lean in the construction industry will know that that's all about looking at processes and what are your key decision points and who's involved in getting feedback early. I'd say all of those things are important. So in terms of implementation, generally, in a nutshell, people, process, technology, and then the other part of the question was, and I'm desperately trying to remember it, what it was what was the last bit, Barry?
Apologies. How important do you feel it is? One of the most beneficial changes to make within the practice of practice to ensure BIM is rolled out efficiently within a practice, and how important do you feel it is for a practice to embrace BIM Level 2 now?
Well, in terms of BIM Level 2 now, this is starter BIM. BIM Level 2, so the UK objective was to take through a push-pull, so push in terms of deliverables, going out to the market with BIM deliverables, and then pull in terms of the industry themselves beginning to see, and certainly with the tier ones in the UK, people like Skanska and Lang O'Rourke and Vinci and so on, it's very clear that they are beginning to see very clear advantages to their own work processes of doing BIM as well, and beginning to do some other stuff as well that's outside the scope of what government are asking for. So that push-pull side of things is key. In terms of do we need to do this now? I think you do, because the problem with not doing, the problem with just saying, well, we won't do it yet, or as I unfortunately quite commonly hear is, well, Ben, we'll do this when we win our first job with BIM deliverables. The problem is, this isn't business as usual. This is quite substantial change in the way that we work and the way that we do things. It's not hard, but it takes a while to actually get used to doing things in the new way. So if you try and do it on that first job in anger, you will almost certainly find that the best result you get is that the job's horribly unprofitable, because you're learning all of these new things as you're doing it, and and you're probably delivering slower than you need to on a job where you're doing it in anger. So I would say do it now. Start doing it to sets of processes. So I actually think, looking around the world, there are other ways of doing things. The Norwegians have their set of things. But I actually, maybe it's because I'm a Brit. I think that the UK set of standards is really good, and I can. And in terms of the process, it just makes really good sense. So, I would say definitely start now. The only deliverable that I think, takes a little bit of wrapping your head around is the Kobe side of things, and even that's pretty straightforward once you've done it once or twice.
Sure.
So I'd just go for it. Okay, that's that one. I've spent too long answering.
Well, I'm cautious. It's coming over the hour mark now, so I would personally just like to say thank you, Ben, for your time. It's been
You're very welcome.
Superb presentation. I'm sure everybody would agree. There's a few thank yous coming in as always. So thank you ever so much. Is there anything else
thank you, everybody.
You would like to say?
No, just thank you very much, and I hope it was useful. You never know with these things; it's always very strange being so disconnected from your audience by the internet. But look, I really hope this was all useful to everybody, and certainly, if anybody wants to contact me and ask any more, or of course, really importantly, if anybody would like to know more about what Viewpoint are doing, please do get in contact.
What's the best way for people to get in contact with you, Ben?
So it's ben.wallbank@viewpoint.com.
Fantastic.
Or if you go onto the Viewpoint website, there are all kinds of phone numbers and so on that you can ring there as well.
Superb. Well, once again, thank you ever so much. Just with regards to next week's webinar, that's actually with James Salmon. He's going to be presenting on BIM and IPD and why the AEC industry needs it. Yeah, with that said, thank you ever so much again, Ben, and thank you everybody for attending. If I can be of any help at all to anybody, whether you're a client or a candidate, please don't hesitate to get in contact with me either via Barie@bimrec.com. Thanks, Ben.
You're very welcome.
You
Cheerio,
take care.
everybody.
Thanks now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.